Greetings from Daytona, where a band of dreamers took a strip of beach and turned it into a proving ground. The Great American Race, where year after year, greatness is the destination. So book your experience and soak in 500 miles of history and tradition. Once you arrive, you'll never look back. Secure your seats now at Daytona500.com.
Roll Tide and welcome to this Tuesday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. This is Roger Hoover. Great to be with you from our Tuscaloosa studios as we start our week of programming here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network, looking back at the Vanderbilt game and looking forward to what's coming up for Alabama football against South Carolina. We'll start our show by taking a look at what's coming up on the program, plus our headlines, thanks to our friends at RJ Young. RJ Young is the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. They've given us a smart board to go through everything in a very interactive way here on the show. We'll start by talking with the place kicker for the Alabama Crimson Tide, Graham Nicholson, who has made one field goal this year in only 2 attempts, but he's been perfect on point after attempts. He won the Groza Award last year for Miami of Ohio, so he joins us to talk about his decision to join Alabama. Then we'll catch up with Chris Stewart, the voice of the Crimson Tide, not only get a preview for head coach and the Kalen DeBoer show coming up on Wednesday, but also talk about Alabama football in wake of the Vanderbilt loss. Then we'll visit with one of our Alabama legends of the week, Ricky Davis, who will be honored along with Sylvester Croom coming up this Saturday as Alabama commemorates 50 years since the 1974 National Championship team. We'll talk to Ricky Davis as our Alabama Legend of the Week, and then another legend will drop by, Corey Reamer, as we take a look back to last night's edition of Crimson Tide Rewind. We'll have a brief summary of it with Be Kind Crimson Tide Rewind, looking back at what his thoughts were from the Vanderbilt game and what has to happen against South Carolina. Speaking of Crimson Tide football, again, a tough loss against Vanderbilt, 40-35, the final score, as Alabama fell down early, 13-0, really scramble mode ever since then for the Crimson Tide in that game, as Alabama never led against Vanderbilt. The Commodores get the 5-point win. First loss in 40 years to Vanderbilt after Alabama had won 23 straight in the series. So with the loss, Alabama now 4-1 on the year, 1-1 in SEC play. The Crimson Tide dropped to number 7 in the AP poll, getting ready for this Saturday when the Crimson Tide will be at home against South Carolina, a team that has posted a really impressive win in SEC play against Kentucky and probably were a few plays or penalties away from beating LSU earlier this year. So South Carolina, they're trying to bounce back after a loss last week against Ole Miss. They will be the opponent at Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium starting at 11 a.m. Our radio coverage starting at 8 o'clock coming up on Saturday. Crimson Tide soccer team also fell for the first time in SEC play this year. 2-0 was the final score against Kentucky last Friday. So the Crimson Tide try and bounce back this week with back-to-back matches Thursday at Auburn in the rivalry. Yes, it is called the Iron Bowl of Soccer. There is a literal trophy that is the Iron Bowl of Soccer trophy. I know we joke about that with other sports. Not only is trophy with other sports, but there is for this one. So don't hate me, Tom Roberts. I said it. Alabama at Auburn coming up on Thursday at 6 p.m. And then on Sunday, it will be Alabama at home against Texas A&M. Always A&M, one of the better teams in the SEC. Should be a fun match at 6 p.m. at the Alabama Soccer Stadium. Let's keep going. The Alabama volleyball team will be back to action this week after picking up its first win in SEC play. It was quite a thriller at Foster Auditorium on Sunday as Alabama defeated Georgia 3-2. A great victory for Rashinda Reed and the Crimson Tide. Now Alabama this week on the road, first of all taking Missouri at 7 p.m. on Friday, and then Sunday at Arkansas at 3 o'clock to round out the weekend slate before the Crimson Tide will be back at home. The next home match will be the following week against the Auburn Tigers. Alabama football at home this weekend, and that means it's time to head back to Vector Security Champions Lane. Our concert series returns with Jake Matthew coming up this week as he will be performing right after we're done with our portion of the pregame show on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. We'll be on stage from 8 to around 8:40, and then at 9 o'clock a.m. it will be Jake Matthew taking the stage. He'll be back with us later in the year for the Iron Bowl as well, but wanted to remind you as well, Mr. Easton Corbin, he's coming to town along with Smith Distillery coming up for the Missouri Missouri game at the end of the month. So good time coming up at Vector Security Champions Lane. We'll go through everything coming up at Champions Lane on our next edition of Crimson Drive on Thursday. But right now, we want to start with a one-on-one conversation with a member of the Crimson Tide football team. I mentioned Thursday's show will be joined by running back Justice Haynes, but today we are joined by Alabama kicker Graham Nicholson to talk about what's led to success for him in his collegiate career and why Alabama was the perfect fit for him. Roll Tide and welcome back to Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, as we're at Bryant-Denny Stadium in the Advantage Center at our podcast studio. I'm Roger Hoover, now pleased to be joined by the place kicker for Alabama football, Graham Nicholson, in his first year with us here at the Capstone. Graham, how's everything going? Roll Tide.
It's awesome. I love being here. Super excited about this opportunity. It's just the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah, we're certainly glad to have you here. Obviously, the winner of the Lou Groza Award this past year for Miami of Ohio. Just how much fun have you had getting to be an Alabama football player and play your games here in Bryant-Denny?
Oh, it's so much fun. It's such a cool experience. I mean, I played in front of like a few crowds on the road at Miami, but it wasn't quite anything like a home crowd at Bryant-Denny. It's so fun, just the atmosphere and enjoying really every minute of it it's so much fun.
Let's talk a little bit about your coming to Alabama and starting to bond with some of the different specialists. First of all, James Burnip, the punter for the Crimson Tide. We've seen Connor Talty handle kickoffs, and then we got to talk a lot about Neeland Hibbett, your long snapper. How much did you enjoy getting to know those guys when you were in the transfer portal, and then especially once you made your choice with us?
Yeah, I really appreciate those guys because I know it's not easy to take somebody into the room, especially I know those guys are tight. Talty's been there for a couple of years, but James and Neeland, they've been there together the entire time. So it's a lot to ask for them to take somebody new in and really appreciate them. But I really feel like they've done that. And I feel like I'm really close with all three of those guys. And that really means the world to me. It opens me up and really helps me be at my best. And without those guys, I wouldn't be anything off the field, especially on the field. Their work is very obvious for how it contributes to my success.
How'd they help you the most kind of off the field here in Tuscaloosa or going to school here?
Well, James specifically, huge thank you to James. He's really kind of showed me around Tuscaloosa, showed me like what I'm supposed to do, where I'm supposed to be and when, and really kind of helped me get settled in. Because obviously I know how to be a college football player, but I knew how to be a college football player at Miami. So kind of like him being able to teach me just the ways really of being a player here. And that has been huge for me.
That's really good to see. And for you guys, I mean, there's so much time spent together with all different players and their position groups, but especially for special teams players on the practice field. Do you guys pretty much do your own thing while the rest of the team is kind of scrimmaging against each other? How is practice laid out for all of you?
Yeah, we get a little bit of leeway, I'd say. So we only really will have a couple periods during practice that are focused on us. Like a normal Tuesday practice for me, I'll have a field goal period and then a kickoff period. And practice is 23 periods. So for the other 21, I'm in theory doing nothing, but we'll do stuff like sometimes we'll go in and we'll stretch in the weight room and get some mobility work in. And then I enjoy doing like little stuff like I'll shag James's punts and stuff. Sometimes it's fun to get back there and try to catch him because he's so dang good. He puts that ball so high up there.
So when Cole Adams got injured, did you raise your hand and be like, hey, I've been doing this in practice all the last few weeks. If you need me, I'm there.
I did. But that was laughed at. So, yeah.
That's certainly good to see. And for you, I'm sure practice is kind of like a game too, because there's so many periods during the game where you're not doing very much. And then all of a sudden you're pressed into action on a field goal or an extra point. So how do you get mentally prepared to be loose, having fun during the game, but also know when it's time to lock in?
Yeah, I attribute a lot of that to experience. As a kicker, young kickers will go into games and they'll be nervous, they'll be trying to be warm the entire game, even when the team's on defense and stuff. And for me, it's kind of like, I know when I'm going to be potentially used, so I'll be ready then. But in the times when I'm not probably going to be used, it's time to let yourself mentally relax a little bit, because if you try to stay wired the entire game, you're going to be drained and it's just not even going to be possible.
Is there a certain yard line the offense gets to that allows you to start to know when the time is to warm up and things like that?
Yeah, by the time we cross half field, I'm always making my way down to the net. I'm going to start hitting a couple balls, but it's kind of hard to gauge with the offense we got. I mean, they are so good, and they'll score from anywhere on the field. So I'm always alert, ready to run out there for an extra point. But in terms of getting ready for a field goal, the 50-yard line.
That's good to see. And kind of sticking with the process kind of theme as well, whether it's a physical process, mental process, do you have a checklist in your mind for every kick you have?
Yeah, I do. So I'm going to hit a ball on first down and a ball on second down. And then by the time third down hits, I'm going to be making my way over. And I always find James. That's my reference point. I just stand next to James, and then I don't have to worry about hearing the call or anything. Like if I see the certain few people running onto the field, I know it's time to go. And at that point, I'm in my own world. I control my thoughts a lot. I don't let any negative thoughts come into my brain, because that's really what screws you up as a kicker, is when you let negative thoughts start to creep in and affect your process. So it's just the same thing every time. Words on repeat, like trust your process, nice and smooth, and you make it, and easy stuff, and takes care of itself from there. Kind of black out a little bit.
There you go. So it's led to a really great career, not only here at Alabama, but Miami as well. Let's start about how you got kind of down this road. Were you a soccer player first that then picked up football, or was football always something you had in your mind?
It's hard to say that football wasn't always something that I had in my mind, because like when I was 5 years old, I think I had a Shane Graham jersey, who was the kicker for the Bengals. Being from Cincinnati, it was cool. He had the same name as me, but it wasn't really something that I was considering until my freshman year of high school. I had played basketball for the varsity football coach at my school, and the kicker had graduated, and he was like, "We need somebody to do it, so you might as well come try." And so I went out and tried, and I was good at it. I was really good at it. And it's kind of my personality, that I like things that I'm good at. And I kind of just ran with it. And I realized that I was a little bit more than good at it. I had some, like, potentially a future in it, and continued to work. And here I am at Alabama.
Here you are at Alabama. I'm sure a lot of work, not only for your school team, but what about in the summer, kind of on your own? Any specific camps you went to that really got you in better shape?
Yeah. Kicking is a lot of your own personal work, because there's only really so much that you can do at practice, because I only really do one thing. I kick field goals. Like, it's pretty simple. But yeah, I have a kicking coach in Cincinnati, Andrew Gantz. Fantastic. He trains a lot of the other top guys, like Alex Rayner at Kentucky, Chad Ryland, who plays in the NFL. He just kicked a game winner, not a walk-off, but it was a game winner yesterday for Arizona, which was awesome to see him do. But yeah, training in an environment like that with so much competition and just people pushing me every day, it makes it really easy to get good fast.
And how much does he help you even now that you're in the season, obviously miles away from him, but just staying in constant contact about everything that's going on?
Oh, a ton. I send him my film from almost every practice still, and we break it down together. And that really allows me to avoid falling into like a big drought, because that can happen with kickers, where you'll be just fantastic, and then out of nowhere, it's like nothing. Like, it feels like you can't kick a ball. And if I stay in contact with him and we stay on top of things, that doesn't really ever happen to me.
What made Miami the right choice after high school?
It was close to home. It was my best offer in theory, and it really felt like a good place to be able to go succeed. I started as a freshman, and I knew that I had that opportunity going in. I knew that it wasn't going to be handed to me. I had to work for it, but I knew that I had a chance. And so it was really a unique opportunity, especially being close to home. And the COVID recruiting process was tough. So Miami was a school that I had gotten to go and look at, see the campus. I knew a lot of people that went to that school and had enjoyed their time there. So it felt pretty easy of a decision for me.
Now, when you mentioned the COVID recruiting process, were you having to really sell yourself to a lot of schools? Were you sending messages to coaches and getting your huddle tape out there and things like that?
Yeah, that was a lot of it. And pretty much everything was going through Twitter, which is a lot of how recruiting works. But for kickers, a lot of the things that the coaches want to see is they want to see it in person, because it's really easy to fake film. Like, I never did that, but you can easily take a video of yourself with a 30-mile-an-hour wind and kick like a 75-yard field goal, and it'll look so good. You can turn off the sound and make it look like you just have a cannon of a leg, but it's just faked. So they like to see it in person, and that happens at specialist camps over the summer, which is like kind of like a normal college camp where you go and try to get eyes on you. But they canceled all those. So the only one that I went to was the Miami one my junior year, and I'd won that my junior year. So that kind of lined me up, but I didn't really get many opportunities. I was kind of just, selling myself.
So when you get to Miami, what was the learning curve like of knowing how to kick in college? What were some of the differences between high school football than what you had there?
That's honestly one of the things that I look back on my career and I'm like, wow, like I handled that really well, because there was an older guy there who helped me, and he did have pointers for me, but he wasn't traveling, like he wasn't there with me on the sidelines. So at the end of the day, I was figuring out how to be a college kicker by myself. And I think that has contributed a lot to my success, is that I figured out how to do things my way, and I wasn't trying to like be somebody else or be a different kicker. I was just being myself. And that really helped me be successul.
And then last year, as it was going along, did you feel like you were having a special season that would warrant an award like the Luke Rosa Award?
I'm not a big stats person. I don't like to look at my stats. I don't like to know what I'm doing. And I can't remember. It was after week 6 or week 7, I won like the mid-season All-American award. I think I was 12 for 12. And I was like, oh, like I'm doing better than everybody else, I guess. Like if I just keep this up, maybe I have a chance. And then I'd say probably 3 games later, I'd hit, I don't know, maybe 6 more field goals. And I was like, wow, like all I got to do is finish and I got this thing. And that's what I did.
How special was award season and getting that honor?
It really, it's so cool. It's so nice to be able to get that, I don't know, just the award and the credibility really for all the work. Like it's just a fulfillment of all the work that I've put in. But I will say that it's nice, but it's not nearly as nice as winning anything with the team. There's no personal accolade that will feel better than winning a championship with a team.
And you come to a team in the transfer portal that just won the SEC a year ago, is undergoing a bit of a transition as well, and you were recruited by this coaching staff once you got in the portal. What stood out to you about Kalen DeBoer and what the program he wants to have at Alabama? Why'd you want to come?
Well, he made it very clear that although he was a new coach and he wanted to do great things, he wasn't going to change the fact that Alabama is Alabama. And for me, growing up, like seeing Alabama football, like it's just Alabama football. Like to me, it's the pinnacle, it's the peak. There's no school that can even compare. I'm from Ohio, so obviously everybody wanted me to go to Ohio State, but once Bama was in contact with me, I had my mind made up. I just needed to figure out how to get it done.
Now, you and Kalen DeBoer have something in common. He's trying to replace Nick Saban. You're trying to replace or just be the next kicker after Will Reichard, who, of course, had a long career here, has a scoring record in NCAA football. Have you gotten to know Will pretty well and stayed in touch with him throughout the year?
Yeah, I got to meet him a few times. He's been around a little bit, and he's obviously super close with James Nealand and Talty and those guys in the room. So kind of like friend of a friend, but I respect him so much. He's did such an incredible job here, and it's really hard to be good, and he was good here forever. Probably arguably the best kicker in college football history, but it's hard to say that there's much of an argument there. He's so good.
So good. And again, you're off to a really good start for the Tide this year. Curious as well, we've talked about this with different position players. So for thinking about getting in shape in the weight room, what's most important for you? What exercises, what workouts are most important to stay? You definitely want to have a strong leg, but also loose and limber at the same time.
Yeah. So I had a lot of transition when I came here with the weight staff. Obviously they're fantastic. Coach Blue is literally the best possibly in the world at what he does. And I was used to kind of like what I said at Miami, I was kind of doing my own thing. And that included the weight room where I would listen and like obviously do what I was told. But there were certain things like some days we would be squatting and have practice the next day. And I was like, I'm just not going to do that. And here it's been awesome. They listen so much. They change things when I don't feel quite right. And they really make it so that I don't really have to make any of those decisions myself. I just walk in there and get told what to do, and then I do it, and I feel great. And it's really the best recipe possible for me.
That's going to really serve you well, not only here, but down the road, hopefully in the NFL. What do you think could be after the NFL for you? What do you like to do away from football?
I'd like to live some sort of a laid-back life. I could see myself, like, if I can make it in the NFL for a while, get a little bit of money, I could start like some sort of like a charter fishing service, deep sea fishing, just kind of chill for a little bit.
Has that been a big hobby of yours your whole life?
Yeah, I love fishing. Any chance I get.
Okay, what are some of your favorite spots you've been to around the world?
I did a lot of fishing growing up in Orange Beach, Alabama, actually. My grandparents had a place there for the entirety of my time growing up, so my dad would take me out and we'd go fishing, whether it was on the pier or deep sea. It was such a fun experience.
So you're hearing Roll Tide a lot, even back then.
Oh, yeah. Safe to say I've been a fan forever. Just not everybody knew that.
And now he gets kicked for the Crimson Tide. We're kind of near the midway point of the season. Obviously, a tough loss this past week against Vanderbilt. How do you feel like this team's going to respond with what we see starting on Saturday with South Carolina?
I really think the energy it's all being focused towards the positive. Obviously, it sucks to lose. Nobody wants to lose. But this really gives us a unique opportunity to where it can open our eyes and help us become the best version of ourselves. We talk about it every week. We celebrate wins because it's hard to win. And this is just a great reminder of how hard it is to win. And with this reminder, we can take that and really flip the switch, become the best version of ourselves, and push our way all the way through to the end.
We look forward to seeing it. Well, Graham Nicholson, you're off to a great start with us here at the University of Alabama. Just thank you so much for the time you've given us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Best of luck moving forward. Roll Tide.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Roll Tide.
Experience racing like never before. From the sandy beaches of Daytona to the high banks of one of the most exciting super speedways on the NASCAR circuit. Don't miss out as NASCAR kicks off the 2025 season with the Daytona 500 on February 16th, 2025. Witness history in the making and purchase your tickets today at DaytonaInternationalSpeedway.com. Fun conversation with Graham Nicholson. Again, coming up on Thursday, we'll be joined by Alabama running back Justice Haynes on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Chris Stewart is the voice of Alabama football, and he joins us not just to talk about football in this episode. A little bit of men's basketball coming up, as well as something special is planned for Friday here in Tuscaloosa. More on that with Chris Stewart and our weekly conversation on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Chris, it's always tough after a loss for the Crimson Tide, but how do you hope, first of all, this team uses this week to get ready to bounce back against the Gamecocks?
Yeah, obviously, you hope that it's something that draws people together instead of splinters them apart. I'd be shocked if it didn't. Disappointing, frustrating, but no more so than for the players and coaches themselves. They're the ones that invest as much as they do. Fans invest heart, emotion, finances to travel, to be a part of it, and you get that. But nobody invests more of themselves in the games than the players and the coaches. So hopefully people will rally behind them as they try to rally around each other and get themselves ready for a team in South Carolina that's wounded as well, but is shown to be very dangerous also.
Looking back quickly at the Vanderbilt game, the offense didn't have that many plays on the field, still scored 35 points, but the defense was out on that field for a very long time. Just what made things tough for Alabama's defense against the Commodores?
Yeah, Alabama obviously missed some tackles, missed some assignments, things that they'll go to work on this week. But I think we also have a tendency, and I say we, meaning anybody that plays Vanderbilt or anybody that loses a game, we focus so much on what happened to our team and what we didn't do. And that's where it needs to start. And that's the thing you can control. But I think especially in the case of Vanderbilt, we failed to give them the credit they deserve for making some great plays. One that comes to mind was the 4th and a foot that they had. Was that late third quarter, I guess? You felt like you're about to get the football back and felt like you made some plays to put them in a bad position. And to their credit, they make a great play. The throw was had enough air under it so that the receiver could run under it, make the grab, a great catch. To not a fullback breaker, but it definitely sprained it a good bit. It was a great play on their part. They're able to keep Alabama from ever taking the lead. The fumble that was forced of Jalen was a great play, great hit. Obviously, he wishes that we'd gotten a block on that side, or that he'd been able to get rid of the football sooner, or been more aware of what was coming in his face so that he could have held on to it. But it didn't happen. And again, though, that's Vanderbilt making a play. And we also tend to think, well, it's Vanderbilt. We said it in the open. This ain't your daddy's Vanderbilt. They're tough. They're talented. Their quarterback had wins against SEC teams last year. They have beaten a good Virginia Tech team this season and had Missouri on the ropes. Should have won that game. none of that changes who Alabama is or what Alabama should have done. My point is, the gloom and doom and some of the statements about this being the worst loss. I mean, it's overreaction, because this is a better Vanderbilt team, and Alabama is capable of and will play far better in weeks to come.
And we've talked before about how Coach DeBoer has been really steady throughout this entire process of not only taking over the job from Coach Saban, but getting into his own and coaching and getting a big win against Georgia. Did you see the same kind of steadiness even post-game after a tough loss on Saturday?
Sure. No question, Roger. No, look, he was not happy. He was frustrated. He was disappointed in the outcome and in what led to it. At the same time, he was not out of character from what we've seen of him in the past several weeks. One of the things to respect so much and appreciate about Coach DeBoer is his ability to remain consistent, his ability to, not be too high after a great win last week against Georgia. And as I said, he wasn't happy at all with the outcome of that ball game. Disappointed, frustrated, but at the same time, very understanding of the fact that everything you want to do and accomplish this year, outside of being undefeated, is very much in front of this team.
Well, that's certainly good to see. And then something we haven't talked about a lot in our weekly interviews, but we will start talking about more, is Alabama men's basketball. And coming up on Friday, Chris, there is a very special event coming up at Coleman Coliseum, the likes we have not seen before. Can you tell us what's in store?
Yeah, look, we've had what used to be back in the day, Midnight Madness, when there was the hard, fast rule of when you could start practice, and teams may go at midnight, and you'd have a big buildup around that. Basically, you're going to have the things take place in this game and in this event that would have been midnight, but they're simply at 8:30 instead. So excited about that. 7:30, I guess, is a start for a lot of stuff. But anyway, it will be taking place at Coleman Coliseum, where you're going to have the introduction of the team. You're going to have a three-point contest, a slam dunk competition, which Nate Oates has already said will be unlike anything we've seen, simply because the participants are highly skilled in many regards, but especially in the dunk category. So it's going to be fun to watch, but there's also going to be a scrimmage. We'll have a chance to talk with Coach Oates about this team, and it's going to be fun for the fans. There is a $10 charge if you're not a student. This is part of the NIL deal that we're in right now, but it'll be, I think it's something people will definitely get their money's worth when they come out and see just how exciting and entertaining this team is going to be, but also very special, the Final Four banner reveal, which we've never had at the University of Alabama before for men's basketball, and very excited about that taking place and honoring last year's team, and yet turning the page and seeing why there's so much excitement about this year's squad as well.
It's going to be a lot of fun coming up on Friday. And then, Chris, it's going to be a quick turnaround getting ready for Saturday morning. 8 a.m. will be our start time of Extra Security Champions Lane. And again, a great opportunity for this football team against South Carolina to take a step forward, getting ready for what we know is going to be a tough stretch this season.
Yeah, there's no question. And South Carolina's good. They are a dangerous team that you can't sleepwalk through this ball game. They will come out ready. They've lost a couple that they want back after they beat Kentucky earlier in the year. They need this game just as Alabama does in order to stay in the position they're in right now. So it's, I think, another opportunity. Every game we have seen this year has been an opportunity to learn about this squad. The opener, there was the excitement of it being Kalen DeBoer's first game, and just the season opener period brings a lot of excitement. Week 2, the dedication of Saban Field. The third week, the trip to Wisconsin. Week 4, of course, the fact that it was a top 5 matchup with Georgia. Then we didn't handle the post big game atmosphere or lack thereof in Nashville. Didn't manage that well. So how do you respond now? Everybody wants to see how you respond from a loss, and I'll be surprised if they don't see this Alabama team show up and motivated and determined to not let what happened a week ago happen again.
We look forward to seeing the response. Well, Chris Stewart, thank you so much for your time with us this week on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Have fun with all the events coming up this week, and we will see you on Saturday. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, buddy. Thanks so much.
Greatness is the destination. So book your experience and soak in 500 miles of history and tradition. Secure your seats now at Daytona500.com.
Well, we always love when our former letter winners come back to campus and be honored as honorary captains. And this week we get to honor Ricky Davis, a member of the 1974 Crimson Tide. He joins us to talk about playing for the legendary Paul Bear Bryant, plus what he's been up to since his playing days at the Capstone. Here's our Alabama Legend of the Week, Ricky Davis.
Been 50 years since Alabama won the SEC championship in 1974, and we're joined by safety Ricky Davis. And Ricky, first of all, I know you chuckled when I said 50 years. Does it feel like 50 years since you were part of that great team here in Alabama?
It really doesn't. I'm still got really good friends, and Sylvester Cream and I, we were co-captains that year, and Sly's a great friend, and I worked with him when he was coaching, and so he called me just like 2 minutes after the game Saturday. My phone rings, my cell phone, and it's Sylvester. We sat there for 30 minutes and talked over the Vandy game. But yeah, it was a great experience, and we had a great group of players, and obviously with Coach Bryant, that was really something special.
It certainly was, and we want to hear all about it. First of all, let's talk about your journey to Alabama. Tell us where you're from and how you started to get on Alabama's recruiting radar.
Yeah, I grew up in Bessemer, Alabama. Played quarterback in high school. Our senior year, they closed Bessemer High School and they closed Carver High School, and they built Jess Lanier, integrated the program, and built Jess Lanier High School. And so that was my senior year, and we had a great year. We were 7-2-1, and then I was recruited more heavily by Auburn than I was Alabama. My mom and dad didn't go to college. I had an older brother who was 3 years older than me, and he was at Alabama. He wasn't playing ball, but I almost went to Auburn. I'd always been an Alabama fan. I was a quarterback in high school, and I was looking to play quarterback in college. And Pat Sullivan would have been a senior my freshman year had I gone to Auburn. But I'd always loved Coach Bryant. I'd always loved watching his show on Sunday afternoons at 4 o'clock. And so when it came time to make a decision, I decided to go to Alabama, and really am glad that I made that decision. With Coach Bryant, went to the Wishbone our freshman year, so I was disappointed about that. But I was moved to defense and ended up starting my junior and senior years, and just made a lot of great friends in Tuscaloosa that I still talk with and visit with today. And it was just a great experience to play for Coach Bryant, because all the lessons that I still look back on and apply in my daily operations every day.
Of course, being an Alabama fan like you were, watching the Coach Bryant television show, well, what was it like when you finally got to talk to him? And then once you make that decision to sign with Alabama, you start to get to know him as a player coach as opposed to being a fan like you had been before.
Back then, John David Crow was the assistant coach. He was an assistant coach in Tuscaloosa, and he handled more of the recruiting. I mean, I talked to Coach Bryant, and Coach Bryant he didn't push. I mean, from a recruiting standpoint, it's just like, hey, because I dealt mostly with Coach Crow, and then I had visited Tuscaloosa a couple of times and sat down and talked to Coach Bryant. And I think somebody, maybe the guys at the Bright Star in Bessemer, they were huge Alabama fans, and I think they had made a call to somebody in Tuscaloosa that, hey, that Auburn's recruiting him really, really heavy, and if you don't want to lose him, somebody. So one morning I'm getting ready to go to school, and my mom, it's about 7 o'clock. My mom comes and knocks on my bedroom door, and she said, Ricky, Coach Bryant's on the phone. And I thought, yeah, sure. I would say this was in probably early November, and I'm thinking it's some buddies of mine from high school or something like that. And so answer the phone and it's like, hello. And then all of a sudden hear the voice on the other end of the phone, and there was no mistaking Coach Bryant's voice. And all he said was, I just wanted to let you know how much we want you to come down here. And if you want to be a part of something special, then come on, come on. And if you don't, then go somewhere else. That was his sales pitch. It was kind of like, okay. And, but my uncle was the only one of my aunts and uncles who had gone to college, and he went to Alabama, and we lived next door to them. And so we had Thanksgiving meals together every holiday. So I walk in the back door, and he's got Yeah Alabama on the record player back then, playing the Alabama fight song. Comes up to me and gives me a big hug. This is right before signing day, because back then you didn't really commit or anything. It was just like we got together with there were 4 or 5 of us from Birmingham, the Birmingham area, who had signed to go to Alabama, and then we all got together and signed your letters. And but you didn't commit anywhere. It was just a matter. So anyway, but that was what my uncle just said. Hey, come on now. We know where you want to go. That's where you got to go to Alabama. So I went to Alabama, and I think it was the right decision for me.
That's certainly good to hear. And you mentioned John David Crow a moment ago. I was curious as well, not just with Coach Bryant, who had an impact on you in your days here at Alabama, but how about some of the other assistant coaches that really helped you become a great football player, ultimately help you achieve your dreams of playing in the NFL?
Yeah. Coach Oliver, Bill Oliver was the secondary coach, and I'm still in touch with Coach. He lives in Tuscaloosa, and I played 4 years in the NFL. He was the best defensive backfield coach of anybody that I played for in the NFL. He was a fundamentals some of the coaches at some of the NFL teams, we'd be watching film about stuff. And I started pretty good bit when I was at Kansas City. And a guy named Gary Barbaro was the free safety there. And I was playing strong safety. Barbaro was 6'3", 220, and I was 6'1", 175. And I think but anyway, the starting strong safety got hurt. And so I ended up starting for 6 games. But we'd be watching film of a game, and the defensive backfield coach would be sitting there, and he would tell Gary was an all-pro free safety, just a great player. Went to one of the directional schools in Louisiana, and but he just wasn't very fundamentally sound with the way that he did things. He just made plays and was a great football player. So the defensive backfield coach at Kansas City, we'd be watching film, and he would say, Gary, watch Davis. Look at his feet. Look at his hips and all this stuff. And I was kind of embarrassed by it, because this guy's an all-pro, and he didn't need to be watching me do something. And so we'd walk out of the meeting and be going down to the locker room and stuff. I'd say, Gary, I said, just keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about trying to change it. But yeah, Coach Oliver was such a great coach. And that's how I ended up playing 4 years in the NFL. I got cut my 5th year and decided to go to law school. But I enjoyed the NFL, but I felt like leaving Alabama with Coach Bryant, and I played at Cincinnati my first year, and Paul Brown was the head coach there. The next year, Tampa Bay and Seattle came into the league, and I called Coach Bryant, asked him if he'd call Coach McKay, because I felt like if I go to Tampa Bay, they didn't have a starting lineup the previous year. And so he called Coach McKay, and I went to Tampa Bay. I was starting in preseason. You had 6 preseason games back then. I hurt my knee in the last preseason game and ended up missing about the first 10 or 12 games. But anyway, the NFL, I felt like things were better from a coaching standpoint and from a support of the program and all the different things. It was just, in Cincinnati, we were 11-3, had a great team. Paul Brown was the coach there, but it was just, I guess I got spoiled by being in Tuscaloosa with Coach Bryant and the way that he did things and the standards that he set and the way the players reacted to it. The NFL back then, and it's even more so now, and it's just in college football too. But back then, it was a pro. You were a pro. You were getting paid to play, and players. I wanted to win. That was the most important thing to me. And when we won at Cincinnati, Tampa Bay, we didn't win. That was the first year they were in the league, and we were 0-16. And and 0-14, I'm sorry. And then the next one, my 2 years in Kansas City, we weren't very good there either. So I wanted to win, and I got disappointed, and I get upset with other players on the teams in the NFL. It didn't seem to bother them when you lost. And that was like, I wanted to win. And so that was the thing about in Tuscaloosa. Coach Bryant had set that standard, and that was what we expected to do. In the 4 years that we were down, our group was down there, we won 43. We were 43-1 in the regular season, and the one that we lost was my sophomore year, was the Bama punt year. And then we lost. We were 0-4 in bowl games. We couldn't win a bowl game. But it was a great experience. And I wouldn't. The 4 years in the NFL, it was professional football. But I love playing college football and what it meant to the players and to the fans and to the coaching staffs too.
And talking about your time at Alabama as well, national championship in 1973, the year that's being celebrated coming up this Saturday is the 74 team that won the SEC championship. What made that group special in 74?
Well, the thing, we had Gary Rutledge and Richard Todd were, the two, and running the wishbone, they both played a lot. Well, what happened the week before we go to play, we opened the 74 season at Maryland. And Coach Bryant had scheduled that game because he wanted to go up east so that we could get more recognition from the Eastern media. And so we go up there, the first regular season game, and everybody was kind of thinking, well, Maryland's not very good. Well, they were good. They were really good. I mean, they had, first round draft choice defensive lineman, had a running back, quarterback drafted. They were really. Walter White was a tight end with them on that team. I played with him with the Kansas City Chiefs. So we go up there, and it was a dogfight. We won 21-16 and beat them. But we overcame a lot because Gary got hurt. Gary hurt his shoulder the week before the first regular season game, so he didn't get to play. He was out for about probably 3/4 of the first, of that year for all the games. And then Richard Todd ends up getting hurt in that. And so when we played Tennessee after the Florida State game, when we played like three quarterbacks, and it was second team, third team, and Richard against Florida State, neither Richard or Gary played, and we go to Tennessee, and it was the same way up there. Neither one of them even dressed out for the game, but we still won. So we can't. And running the wishbone, it was just a lot different. But just the thing, what I look back on in the 4 years down there, there were more ways to win back then, I think, than it seemed to be now. I don't know. It's just like I follow college sports, and I still, want Alabama to win and pull for them and all that kind of stuff. But it's just the whole things are different. But it's just I really appreciate Coach Saban and all he did, and Coach DeBoer. I think he's gonna do a great job in Tuscaloosa.
And we mentioned at the top of the show, you're going to be honored as well as Sylvester Croom, of course, your co-captain on that 74 team. And you mentioned you've stayed in business and in friendship with him throughout all the years. Just how proud of you are of him with everything he was able to accomplish following his Alabama playing career, and specifically becoming the first African-American head coach in SEC football history.
Exactly. And that was, we were planning on him being the football coach in Tuscaloosa. And that a lot of that, I think it was in the works to happen, and then someone stepped in and said, "No, we're not going to do that." But Sylvester he's one of my best friends. I mean, we talked, and as I said, he called me, right after the game, the game Saturday, and we talked about that. But I mean, you will not find a better person than Sylvester Croom as a man. I mean, he's a strong Christian. I respect him as much or more than anybody that I know. I mean, I just look at him, and if we all lived our lives like Sylvester has lived his, the world would be a heck of a lot better place. And he just is outstanding. And it's just for me, I mean, he is a great friend. He's a great football coach. He ended up getting the job at Mississippi State. Larry Templeton, the athletic director, Slot turned it down, I think 3 or 4 different times, where Larry, I reached out to Larry after Jackie Sherrill announced his retirement early in the season, Sylvester and Mike Shula were the two finalists for the job in Tuscaloosa, and then Mike got the job, and Sly was with the Packers. And so in September, when Mississippi State was going on probation because of recruiting violations and all kind of stuff that was going on over there, and so Cheryl announced that he was going to retire at the end of the season. And so I didn't know Larry Templeton. Larry was the athletic director of Mississippi State, and so I called a buddy of mine at the SEC office and said, "Hey, can you give me a phone number and put me in touch with Larry Templeton? I want to see if they would be interested in hiring Sylvester." And this was in October, early October, and during the season. And so I got his number. I called him, and he called me back, and I told him, I said, I work with Sly, and I said, he and I were teammates, and I'm his attorney / agent, and I said I just was curious if you guys might be interested in looking at it. And Larry told me, he said, "Hey," he said, "I followed everything that happened in Tuscaloosa." He said, "That's who we want to hire. We want to hire Sylvester as our football coach here." And I said, so I called Sylvester and told him what Larry had said. And Sly was like, "I don't know. I don't think you can win there without cheating, and I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to buy players. I'm not going to do all that kind of stuff." And so I called Larry back and told him, he goes, "Set up see if he'll meet with us." And so I called Sly. I said, "Just meet with him, Sly." I said, he's in Green Bay. He's up there. And so Larry and the president at Mississippi State, they flew to Milwaukee and met Sylvester in Milwaukee. And they finished, and Larry said, "It went okay." He said, "That's who I want. And I called Sylvester, and he goes, I don't think I want to do that. Because I just don't think that you can win there without, doing things that you're not supposed to do, and I'm not going to do that." And so I called Larry back and told him, and we went, and Larry said, "I want to talk to him again." So they made 3 trips to Wisconsin to meet with Sylvester. And Larry called me after the last one. He goes, "It went fine." He said, "But I'm not sure." And so I called Sly, and I said, "Hey, Sly," I said, "How'd it go?" He said, "Hey," he said, I like him, and I like Larry and the president." He said, "But and I said, "Well," I said, "What Jerry, his wife?" And I said, "What does Jerry want you to do?" I said, "Well," he said, "She wants me to take it." And I said, "What about your mom? What does your mom want you to do?" And she wants me to take it. And Sly's dad had passed away. Sly's dad was a pastor in Tuscaloosa, just a great man. And then I said, "Sly, what would your dad want you to do?" And he just, in his boy, he just got a chuckle. He said, "Hey, man, that's not fair." So his dad would have wanted him to take it too, not just because it was a head coaching job, but because there had been no black head football coaches in the Southeastern Conference. And so Sly said, "I'll talk to him again. Tell him I'll talk to him again." And so they flew back up there again. And Larry called me at like 1:00 in the morning. I was living in South Florida, in Braxton and West Palm Beach. And so Larry called me at 1:00 in the morning. They were flying back to Starkville. And Larry says, "I think we got him." And so it was, but that's one of the things that I'm most proud of, was being involved in working with Sylvester and with Larry Templeton and the people at Mississippi State. And then, Sly went over there. I think he did a great job there. They had no players because most of the players, Sylvester suspended them, kicked them off the team if they weren't doing things. They were still trying to do things the way they had been doing it under the coaches. And Sylvester said, "No, we're not going to do that." And one of the players, they had to go to class. Before that, they didn't have to go to class. Sylvester made them go to class. And if you didn't go to class, Sylvester, one of the best players on the team, he was not going to class. Sylvester called him in and gave him one more chance to start going to class, or you're off the team. And so he wasn't going to class. Sylvester called him in and said, "You're done." And they called his mother, and Sylvester was wanting to tell the player's mother that he was no longer on the team. And the mom was crying on the phone with Sylvester, pleading with Sylvester to let her son and get back on the team. And Sylvester said, "No, ma'am, I'm sorry. I can't do that because this is the standard that I'm setting here. And if I let him get away with it, then what do I do with the rest of the team? And so he kicked the best player on the team off the team and then he's the SEC coach of the year before he got fired at Mississippi State. And so, and it was just, I think it boiled down to, I don't know. I just think that there were other reasons other than just the the wins and the losses, that some people that had never really been pleased with him being the head coach over there to begin with. I think those are the people that stepped in at that point.
Well, again, he's a great Alabama legend. We can't wait to have him in town, as well as you. Be honored for this Alabama-South Carolina game. Ricky, just thank you for all the time you've given us today here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network, sharing some memories, and have fun with your teammates from the 74 team. I know you guys will have a good time. Thank you for your time today. Roll Tide.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Don't miss out on your chance to experience the energy and the excitement of the Great American Race. Witness history in the making and purchase your tickets today for the 2025 Daytona 500 at DaytonaInternationalSpeedway.com. Well, last night we had a lot of phone calls on Crimson Tide Rewind presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health. It's our Monday recap show of the previous game. Corey Reamer and I co-host from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills, and we had a lively conversation about where Alabama goes from here following the loss to Vanderbilt. Here is a sample of last night's show. The full episode can be watched on demand on the CTSN YouTube page, and you can listen to the full show on the Alabama Insider podcast. But here's a little something we like to call Be Kind, Crimson Tide Rewind. And Corey, this is usually the point of the show where I say, okay, Alabama's now 3-0, 4-0. Fortunately, Crimson Tide now 4-1.
Yeah, the enthusiasm's a little bit less today. Everybody's still licking their wounds from this Saturday. It was that was a tough one. I mean, there's just no other way to cut it. It's a game that you always expect to go in. You know, maybe that was the problem. You expect to go in and win that ball game, and give credit to Vanderbilt. You know, we saw kind of the tail end of that Georgia game. You know, there's some exposures that Vanderbilt was able to take advantage of, and you just hadn't seen it's been 40 years, you know, since we've lost to Vanderbilt, and they found a way to they played hard. They came in, they were prepared, they played extremely well, they were well coached, and found ways to really give us a lot of fits, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But, yeah, this is the first loss, but, you know, this is a new era of college football as well. There's still plenty of opportunity for us to find a way into the playoff at the end of the year, but these are you've definitely diminished your room for error for the rest of this season. So a lot of good tape to go back and watch, and a lot of things to get fixed. And sometimes you just need, you know, there's no growth without some pains. And we had a lot of pain on Saturday, and I'm sure that the film session on Sunday and practice today was not a fun one for some of these players. And there's definitely going to be hopefully a sense of urgency from this team to make sure that they're prepared for the rest of this season, because the schedule definitely doesn't get any easier from here on out. There's still a lot of teams that are going to be pretty tough matchups, including this one on Saturday against South Carolina.
So it's Alabama against South Carolina coming up at 11 a.m. on Saturday. Our radio coverage will start at 8 o'clock. But here with you for the next hour from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. And we invite your phone calls. Give us a call at 877-202-BAMA. Again, that's 877-202-BAMA. As we're going to be with you for the next hour. We want to hear your thoughts on Alabama against Vanderbilt and what's coming up between the Crimson Tide and the Gamecocks coming up on Saturday. But back to the Vanderbilt game for a moment. At what point were you the most worried that this game maybe couldn't turn back Alabama's way?
I mean, we never had the lead. I mean, it was just it came out of the gate, got down 13-0 pretty quickly. Had that one turnover from Jalen Milroe with a tip ball. That was not a play that we made a mistake on, or Jalen Milroe made a mistake on, or receiver. It was just a good play by the DB. Gets his hand in there, pops that ball up, and the defender catches it in stride and puts points on the board pretty quickly. But you know, I think coming out of that second half, you score to get it pretty close early on, and then Vanderbilt just kept answering. You know, they just kept answering and putting points on the board. We weren't getting stops on third down, and I think that's probably the moment where I realized that even if our offense is doing their best to keep us in the ball game, we have no answer for this offense on the Vanderbilt side. And, you know, you always think obviously it was a trap game. We saw all the pictures of the rat traps and mouse traps that were around the facility last week. But you hear the coaching staff talking about they had a great week of practice. Yep. And so it's hard to explain other than we just did not execute against an offense that you're not going to see a lot in college football very much. I mean, there's still variations of what we saw from Saturday in a lot of the offenses that we see, but they really rely on that zone read, that option look, and it's a tough offense to prepare for, especially this late in the season. You've had a tough game last week against Georgia, whose offense looks completely different, but we've seen some inefficiencies on the defensive side of the ball throughout this season. I just didn't expect Vandy to be the one that really could point them out and take advantage of them to win that ball game. So there's definitely got to go back to the drawing board. You got to get some of these players, you know, Kane Womack's got his work cut out for him of going back and figuring out what the problem was. And we'll talk about it, I'm sure, throughout this show of really where it broke down, but there's definitely some work to be done. We'll start with the fact that Vanderbilt's offense had the ball for 42 minutes. I mean, that is a recipe for losing right there. Alabama's offense has the ball for 18 minutes. They played 46 snaps on offense. They put up 35 points. The offense was doing everything they could to, you know, obviously we had a couple turnovers that cost us, 2 turnovers that ended up turning into points on both of those for Vanderbilt's offense. But the fact that you can't get off the field when you're facing this Vanderbilt offense that's just inexcusable. You got to find a way to get stops, especially towards the end of the game when you know what they're going to do. They've got the ball. We're down by 5. We've got to find a way to get the ball back, and not committing to the run. Obviously, we got beat on a 4th and 1 with the miracle throw over the top of the defense earlier in the game, but this is the end of the ball game. Vanderbilt's trying to finish this thing off. They're running it. You got to get a stop, and on first down, they gash us for 11 yards. And that was probably the most disappointing thing that we were watching is even in obvious running down situations, the gap integrity of this defense just was not up to par at all. From what you're used to seeing from Alabama's style defenses, it was just a numbers game, and they were able to find, mismatches and had more hats on, on the side they were trying to run to than we could. We had defenders, and they were taking advantage of it. But 42 minutes and 12 of 18 on third down that Vanderbilt was, that's just hard to stomach from us fans that have been watching these, just unbelievable defenses that we've had over the past few years. That's the side of the ball that you can always rely on. Let's get off the field. Let's create some turnovers and find a way to get back in this ball game, give this offense a chance to go out there and win. That was the hard part for us. It's just something that's got to be fixed. And we've seen some inefficiencies throughout this season so far, and some offenses, starting with the South Florida game, we had some receivers that were running deep that were open, and the quarterback couldn't get them to them. And then we saw what Georgia did in the second half of last week's game, and Vanderbilt was able to find ways to have a lot of success, especially in the run game. I mean, that's what we're all used to is these defenses go out there and let's shut the run down and make these quarterbacks beat us with their arm. You got a guy like Diego Pavia, you hope that he's having to throw the ball at some point to beat us. You got to commit to shutting down that run, and we just didn't do a very good job of it on Saturday.
Speaking as a former defensive player as well, and I know when you played there wasn't as much tempo offense, things like that. Teams huddled more, obviously had more balance as well running the football. But, just how draining was it for our defense to be on the field as much as they were, especially when you get late in the ball game? Yeah, it's just tough. This is what our MO of a team always was, is let's wear these opponents down in running the football, and then you could just, at the end of the ball game, you have your way with them, and it's hard to watch Vanderbilt doing it with us. But this was some basic stuff. Obviously, we don't see this style of an offense very often. There's variations of what they do that we're going to see every single week. Zone read is nothing new, not a new concept for anybody, even though offenses have changed and go in a lot more spread or you don't see many option teams. But the lack of discipline that was on the defensive side of the ball, when you're playing an option, you got to get a hat on a hat. And you've got to be able to play gap integrity. You got to know where your leverage is. You got to understand where your help is. And it just seemed like this defense was kind of chasing their tail a little bit. And they were able to create gaps, and we didn't have enough guys to fill them to shut down the run. So Vanderbilt wasn't going to stop it. That's just the way it goes.
So I agree with Mike. I think we got a pretty good chance of still playing well, but you hope that this style of game is not what we're going to be seeing for the rest of the season, where we've got to score 45 to 50 points to be able to even win the ball game because our defense can't stop anybody. That's just that's not what we're about. We've got plenty of good players out there, but we've got to be more disciplined, especially in our running game on the defensive side of the ball than we were on Saturday.
Game that, again, Corey, I think will have the full attention of everybody in that Crimson Tide locker room.
Yeah, you hope so. This is one of those that you hope it's not a hangover game. You hope it's one of those where they're not focused on what they're supposed to be doing. The 24-hour rule applies to wins and losses the same way. You've got to be able to go back to the facility and understand why you lost that game. Watch the tape. Today on Monday is a huge day where you go out on the practice field and you walk through those mistakes that really cost you this past weekend. And so then you move on to the next opponent. You got to be able to forget about it. You understand that there's still a lot to play for this team. And you got to start focusing on a good South Carolina team that's coming in, and it's an 11 o'clock kick. This is an early one that we've got to be prepared for. Alabama's, with this new TV deal, we're not used to having so many 11 o'clock kicks throughout the season. It's been years since we've had it, but you've got to wake up on Saturday and be ready to play. And this South Carolina team is going to have, got a lot of weapons. They've got some names that we've heard, in the past that have been at different schools, which is always the case now with this transfer portal. Robbie Ashford's been a guy that's been filling in. I think Sellers played most of the game last week against Ole Miss at quarterback, but you've got Rocket Sanders as well at running back. That's really good. Alabama fans remember Rocket Sanders really well. He's a guy that's had some success against these Alabama defenses. It's a talented team. They've done a great job of going out there and finding guys that are in these transfer portals to fill some of the holes that they've lost. So the main thing is, watch the tape, learn from it. You got to grow. This is the pain point, but we saw what happened last year. You lose a game early. How does this team respond? What does this leadership on this team look like, where you can rally the troops and realize that there is still plenty of season left to play for and a lot of opportunity, especially with this 12-team playoff at the end. You just got to find a way to get in. You don't have room to drop any more from here on out, so you better be focused each and every single week.
That goes for the fans, too. We kept urging the fans to give Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium a great atmosphere for the Georgia game. Got to have it once again. And the fans did deliver for that Georgia game, but again, need to see it against South Carolina.
Of course they did for the Georgia game, and that was a night game. Now you got 11 o'clock kick. These fans have got to show up and make it difficult, because the last thing you want is to have an opposing team come into Bryant-Denny and there's not much of an environment, or you're not making it difficult on these offenses to be, communicating when they're on the field. And I got a feeling that these fans are going to show up because, like I just said, there's still plenty to play for. This season is not done and far from it. So, this is going to be a good one on Saturday. We're going to learn a lot about this team this coming weekend to figure out what kind of maturity level and leadership that we have from the coaching staff and from the players, see how we bounce back.
Friends, check out Game Day Done Right, because there's one thing we can really all agree on. No one wants to be the last one left at a tailgate at the end of the game, having to do all the cleanup, all the breakdown while their friends are out celebrating. If you've been in this situation before, you know the true value in what the team at Game Day Done Right provides. They handle the entire process for you, from setup to breakdown. Stellar customer service on game days to make sure your group is taken care of from start to finish. All you have to do is visit GameDayDoneRight.com, reserve your tailgate package, and let their team take it from there. So this week, it's Alabama moving on to take on South Carolina on Saturday. Before that, we have a lot coming up here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network as we take a look at our upcoming schedule. Coming up tomorrow, it is the next episode of Hey Coach and the Kalen DeBoer shows. Coach DeBoer will be taking your calls throughout the show. It starts at 6 p.m. at Baumhower's here in Tuscaloosa. On Thursday, we'll have another episode of Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR as we preview the South Carolina game. You can get caught up on all Alabama athletics with a new episode as well of Tide TV This Week. That's on our TV affiliates on Friday across the state, as well as on demand, RolledTide.com, and the Alabama Athletics YouTube channel. Then first thing in the morning coming coming up on Saturday. We'll be on the radio and we'll be in person with you for the beginning of our pregame coverage at 8 o'clock from Vector Security Champions Lane, and then we'll have the kickoff at 11 a.m. for Alabama against South Carolina. Following the ball game, Chris Stewart and Kalen DeBoer will talk about the game on the Kalen DeBoer TV show, which can be seen in our TV affiliates across the state and online on RolledTide.com on Sunday. Then we'll be back with a new edition of Crimson Tide Rewind. We'll start everything over again next week. Crimson Drive always streaming live Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. right here on all CTSN social media platforms. Make sure you are following the Crimson Tide Sports Network, especially on YouTube. Subscribe. You'll have the videos come right to you, as you don't want to miss any of the content coming up this week as we get ready for Alabama against South Carolina. And that's going to wrap up this Tuesday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Huge thanks to our guests, Graham Nicholson, Chris Stewart, and Ricky Davis, as well as Corey Reamer for his time last night on Crimson Tide Rewind. Thank you as well to Ethan Carabin, who put all of this show together, our fine video producer here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. And thanks to all of you for watching. This has been Roger Hoover with you in Tuscaloosa as we look forward to what's coming up on Saturday, Alabama against South Carolina here in Tuscaloosa. Should be a fun week, and we hope to have you back with us coming up on Thursday for the next episode of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Until then, have a safe rest of your week. Roll Tide, everyone.